The transfer portal is open. Guys have been going in there since the end of the regular season. It has caused teams to decline NIT bids because they didn't know how many of their guys were going to go into the portal, or some teams looking ahead towards building the portal for next season. And just about a week ago now, one of the biggest names announced that he is going into the portal, and we heard just about yesterday that Baylor has reached out. They have reached out to Clifford Omoruyi. He is a center from Rutgers and would be coming in as a grad transfer, played all 4 years at Rutgers. And let me tell you, this guy could play for anybody. This guy could play for any team in the country. And I'm surprised that not every team in America has reached out to him to try and get his signature and try to get him on their team for next year. Okay, so he's a center at 6'11", 240, and he is every bit the rim protector that Baylor needs and that everybody wants. He's a guy who's not pulling it from outside. He scores 2/3 of his baskets right at the rim. Had the highest block rate in the Big Ten. Had the most blocks in the Big Ten. 93 blocks last year. The Big Ten has Zach Edey in it, and Clifford Omoruyi led the Big Ten in blocks. He was also one of the top guys in offensive rebounding rate, which is something that Baylor kind of dipped away from towards the end of the season. And we've seen over the years that Baylor's been truly elite. That has been why. When you look at the Elite Eight runs and the Sweet 16 teams, and of course the national championship team that Scott Drew has had, they have been excellent offensive rebounding teams each time. Bang, you add one of the best in the country right there in Clifford Omoruyi, potentially. And this is what I thought was interesting. He's in the 85th percentile in pick and roll scoring. That's kind of the name of the game for athletic big guys, specifically centers, not just in the college game, but in the NBA. That's how you play in the NBA, is the pick and roll. You got to be able to play it. You got to be able to defend it. And I look at Clifford Omoruyi and I see bits of Jonathan Chachua. I see bits of Yves Missi. I see bits of Mark Vital. I see bits of Rico Gathers, all put into this guy. He is big and he is strong and he is freakishly athletic. Like, you watch the highlights, this kid is an incredible athlete. That's the Yves Missi and the Jonathan Chachua I see in him. Okay, both those guys could jump through the gym. They were the best athletes on the court, but they were also really smart in that they utilized that in pick and roll and lob situations. So I see a lot of that in Clifford Omoruyi. But one thing I had talked about since literally the post game after the loss against Clemson was Baylor needs some grit, right? They need a shutdown defensive guy. And Yves Missi was a great shot blocker and a good defender. Josh Ojamuna, at times a very good defender. At times. He dealt with some inconsistency in that department, but a versatile defender, Josh O. Clifford Omoruyi has all the things you want defensively in a center. I talked about leading the Big Ten with blocks. He has led the Big Ten in defensive rating the last 2 seasons. He has a dynasty going on Big Ten defensive rating. He also led the Big Ten in defensive box plus minus. And for those of you who don't know, that is, if you're taken off the court, how much more is the other team going to score? His is negative. You need him on the court if you want to keep teams from scoring. He led the conference in that. He just has Baylor written all over him. All over him. He's got Scott Drew written all over him. And one thing that should not be undersold here is he has an amazing story. He comes to the U.S. from Nigeria at age 14. He doesn't know anybody. He's sent here for a better education, better life, and yes, through some great basketball skills and talent and athleticism. And he sticks around in New Jersey. He stays there for college, stays at Rutgers, plays all 4 years, and really sees a rise in this Rutgers program. I know they're not a tournament team, but they were dreadful a few years ago. And now they're on the precipice of being a tournament team, and they're bringing in some of the top recruits in the country. Clifford Omoruyi is a big part of that foundation. And it can also not be undersold how well Baylor does with international players, specifically at the center position. And I know that's a big leap for someone who has only been to or lived in New Jersey in the U.S. to come down to Texas. But hey, your other center on the team, he is not only also an international player, he's from your home country. He's from Nigeria. You know, Jonathan Chanwa and Yves Misi from Cameroon, Flo Thamba from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So many international players have come through here. Joe Lual-Acuil is another one off the top of my head. Manu LeConte at guard, a European, right? Miro Little from Finland. All these guys have thrived here at Baylor, whether it's coming straight out of high school, whether it's, coming from some academy or coming in the transfer portal. These guys have all done so well at Baylor, and it's such a Scott Drew emphasis. And every year it seems we have someone that is a terrific international player, and especially at the center position. All of those names I just gave you, half of them were international guys. Joe Lual-Acuil, or excuse me, centers. Joe Lual-Acuil, Yves Misi, Jonathan Chanwa-Acuil, Flo Thamba, they're all centers. And so you see a blueprint here of guys who have gone on to great success, international guys playing center at Baylor. And there are some who hadn't had any time in the U.S., but almost all of them had very little time in the U.S. before coming to Waco. So there is a track record there. So in terms of reaching your goals, both in the college game and getting to the pros, Baylor can get you there. And in terms of Baylor's goals of what they need to fix and adjust for next year's team, not the least of which being experience, he's a fit there. Cliff Omoruyi, Baylor, marriage, perfect, happily ever after. Give me Cliff Omoruyi. I will be doing cartwheels if Baylor gets Cliff Omoruyi. To me, and we will be looking at some of the other transfer portal targets later on in this week and throughout this offseason, obviously. This is the most perfect fit I've seen so far. So I am all the way in on this, no doubt.